Hello there, it is a Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. This week we are taking yet another general viewer submitted question, and as always, if you too would like to submit one to the ever-growing list, feel free to do so with a comment. Helps if you include a question mark for when I control F and, I've got the document open, just copy-pasting all the questions there. But nonetheless, we will move right along to the question. This week's question comes in from a general viewer whose username should be somewhere in the lower third of the screen right about now. Anyway, they ask, fairly simply, what kind of role-playing game don't you like or even hate? Which is, I feel like hate is definitely a little strong, right? Hate is definitely a little strong. But undoubtedly, I do like a ton of different role-playing games, right? We certainly play, varieties from my three big archetypes, which I've talked about in the past. Three big archetypical role-playing games. We talked about this in a past IRL video, where there's sort of like the sandbox, immersive simi one. You're sort of like Elder Scrolls. The more narrative-driven one, right, where you have branching dialogue paths, most CRPGs, so like Baldur's Gate 3 that we're playing currently, and your sort of action role-playing game that's very stats-focused and sort of like, loot-driven, sort of like a Path of Exile or Diablo. Anyway, or I guess as we've played on the channel recently, Elden Ring, I would say that's an action role-playing game. Nonetheless, I guess a subgenre. I think usually these are maybe sort of dipping into both action role-playing games and narrative ones. But, they can go all sorts of ways. That was sort of colloquially referred to as the JRPG, the Japanese role-playing game. Which, of course, is something of a misnomer, and there's been, discussion and discourse in the past about whether or not we should still collectively keep calling them Japanese role-playing games, JRPGs, because explicitly, some of the developers, some of the people who make these games have gone out and said, actually, we don't like the association, and sometimes it's seen as, a negative connotation, whereas on the flip side, sometimes there were a bunch of people after that who came out in response to those statements, sort of saying, actually, we are JRPG developers, and we kind of see it as a badge of honor. We quite like it. We think it's endearing, right? So, I don't know. I think you have to go by a case-by-case basis. I don't know if there's been a consensus delivered on it. Certainly, I'm not the person to deliver that kind of consensus. But regardless, that's probably the quickest and most simple way of conveying the thought. Otherwise, we could waffle around and say a turn-based tactical squad role-playing game, right? Wherein you have a group of 2 to 6, I guess, usually, characters that you control. One's a party leader and is that's your main vector of interacting with the world. That's your protagonist. And then you have party members that you can swap in or out, right? Sort of like your old school Final Fantasy. Obviously, new ones aren't, although they're role-playing games made in Japan, they are not Japanese role-playing games, right? There's a sort of video games literacy that you need to understand in order to get the meaning of what I'm saying here. So older Final Fantasy games, Persona games are definitely in that same sort of line of make. I think Fire Emblem usually is, right? I think so. Though sometimes they tend to lean very much into just tactics, right? So, like I said, if you know the term, you know what I'm talking about. But true enough, they tend to not be ones that I'm into, right? I quite enjoyed them as a kid. Growing up, I really very much enjoyed here's some other examples, like Super Mario RPG. I enjoyed that. What do you call it? Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. I've thought about like playing that on the channel as sort of like a fun revisit, because my recollection is that those were like decently short games, so they wouldn't be too wild to just like bang out one month or whatever. Other stuff that I really enjoyed. Final Fantasy VII, the kind of the one and only Final Fantasy game that I ever played through to completion, and actually the first role-playing game that I played from start to finish and ever complete. I think I finished it in either late elementary school or late middle school, or early middle school, I should say. Was the first time I ever completed sort of like a role-playing game. I played plenty, but they were either sort of like more open-ended or like an MMO or something like that there wasn't really a finite ending. But nonetheless, I definitely struggle to get into them. I don't want to say that I just up and up dislike a lot of them. Certainly there are a lot of tropes that go around with the writing and whatnot in them, which I guess is like just an association of the genre or whatever, right? Because there's certainly like plenty of other Japanese games, other role-playing games made in Japan that do not follow along with those tropes. So I don't really know. But they sort of have their own sort of self-contained tropes and stuff that they play around with. And I don't know. I feel as if once I've seen some of that, it's difficult for me to get into others, right? I feel like I'm not that into the tropes anymore, right? I think there's fun to be had there, you know? I almost wonder if it's not unlike... and maybe there is a lot of overlap. Maybe it's... I'm hesitant to say that it's a cultural thing in Japan, right? But certainly there are a lot of like shared sort of like anime tropes that cross over into JRPGs, right? You know, like certain character archetypes that exist across a plethora of different stories and all that, you know? Like growing up and stuff, I really enjoyed like various animes and all that. I enjoyed like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I was super into, I really enjoyed sort of Keroro Gunso, Sergeant Frog. I really like the manga of that. I like some lighter ones like Azumanga Daioh. I really enjoyed toward the latter end when I started falling out of love. I liked The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. I enjoyed what was it? There was like a whole slew of them around that era. Like Lucky Star, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed... Oh, goodness. What was that other more serious one? Baccano, the one on the train. That was really cool. I really enjoyed that. Durara, I think, was a bit of a spinoff. I enjoyed the first season of that. And probably the last one that I really got into was... And I wonder if it was aimed more at, like, more adult audiences, because sometimes that also throws me off. And like I said, the same is true of a lot of these games too. They seem a lot more pointed at like younger audiences, you know, which isn't to say like kids, but I would say there may be like the television and or in the case of anime or the book equivalent or the game equivalent, or I guess book, like a visual novel equivalent of like young adult novels, you know? They, like, as an adult, you can totally enjoy them and find value in them and all of that. But you are not the primary target audience or whatever, right? And if you sort of bounce off of the tropes or like thematics that are usually at play there, there's not much you can do about it, right? Because, you know, you're not the intended audience, really. But some people totally do enjoy it, and more power to them. But, like I said, Mushishi didn't really seem to... Or it was really good at it. Didn't really seem to, I don't know, delve into a lot of those tropes I'm talking about. So, I don't know, I really quite enjoyed that. But, yeah, when it comes to a lot of the various JRPGs, these sort of like tactical squad-based party role-playing games, like I said, I find myself having such a difficult time getting into them. Probably, I am definitely keen to give them a shot, especially whenever I hear like, oh, it's got kind of a straightforward like linear narrative with a little bit of branching here and there, but it is a really satisfying and good linear narrative. I'm super down to give that a shot, right? I don't know, is Nier Automata technically a role-playing game? I don't think so. I think it's more of just like an action game, right? With a whole bunch of other ones thrown in. I've always heard that like, oh, I should try Nier, right? I've had that recommended to me a ton, and I've listened on like some of my favorite video games related podcasts and stuff that I listen to. A lot of people sort of like talking about it glowingly, right? Sort of gushing about it back when they came out and all of that, and the like new remake or whatever, Nier Beginnings or Zero or whatever it was called, right? So I've always thought like, yeah, I should probably play it. I picked it up super duper cheap on sale, Nier Automata, right? But like I said, I'm not even sure if that's a role-playing game. I think it might more so be an action game. Maybe ARPG is more apt. But certainly along these lines, that I had tried maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. It's hard to remember exactly when. But I tried and got, I don't know, decently far into Persona 5, which I loved a lot of things about Persona 5. The music is like legendarily popular. How I feel like you go so often and you'll hear some like video games focused YouTube channel sort of reusing some of their music from that game in just completely unrelated videos because it's pretty good. It's pretty dang good, right? A lot of people enjoy the characters and stuff and all of that. Lord knows I certainly did. I was enjoying it to a decent amount, but I can't help but feel to cut a long story short, I bounced off of it. I got to like, I don't know, being vague to where people who had played the game would know what I'm talking about. I got to the painting stuff, the art teacher or class or whatever it is. I got to that part. And I kind of fell off on it. I kind of fell off in that at that point. Like I said, some of the tropes kind of weighed on me, and I was like, I feel like I kind of get the idea with these characters and all of that. I don't know if I have what it takes to keep going or whatever, right? And I don't know, the combat seemed okay. I think I felt some of there's definitely two divisions to the game. There's like normal world, the grounded world in that, and there's the sort of more fantastical world where the majority, if not the entirety of combat takes place. And I found a lot of not a lot, but maybe like half of the real world stuff to be, I don't know, somewhat tedious or whatever, right? Especially made even more so in knowing that like, yeah, I could maybe just screw myself out of something by picking the wrong dialogue or whatever. And it's not done in like such a rewarding way where it's like you pick the wrong answer or whatever. You pick an incorrect answer or you pick something a bit nonsensical, but you still get told an interesting or cool story, right? You still get access to something, right? Or you have a way to work yourself out of whatever, right? You're kind of just locked out of it, which I found kind of dissatisfying, I think. I don't know. It encouraged me to, if I want this to go this way, I should probably just pop open a wiki while I'm playing and kind of look up and like make a plan for my decisions in the game. You know, if I wanted to go in such and such direction, you know, there's very little wiggle room, I felt. And maybe that's completely off base and not true, but that was kind of the vibe I had at the time, right? And then it's kind of like compounded by the fact that there's like a time limit at play, which I'm okay with time limits and stuff, but they do, if a game is good and it has a time limit, it feels even better. But if there's parts of it that I'm bouncing off of, or if it's like actively bad and there's a time limit at play, there's like a time mechanic, it sort of brings out the worst of it, right? I don't know. Yeah. And I think the setting definitely played a part, right? Because it's very much set as like you're a young man in like high school or college, I forget. And I just was not at that point in my life anymore. And thus I found it a little bit difficult to relate to sort of the same vibe or whatever, right? The sort of setting. I don't know. It was a little too... I don't know. I just bounced off of it. Along the same lines, though, like I said, I wouldn't want to like write all of them off completely, right? I would be down to give it another try, probably on YouTube, but even more so, what's more likely, I would be down to try their recent offering, I think also made by Atlus, right? And I'm pretty sure it's also this sort of traditional JRPG gameplay, right? Where you have like a group or whatever and you sort of build them out, kit them out, and it's like turn-based combat with your group against the enemy. Metaphor Refantazio, right? Came out this year. A similar situation. A lot of voices that I very much enjoy, like in video games and stuff, talking about, saying like pretty good things about the narrative, right? Saying that the narrative is really good. It's pretty well written, pretty surprising, the directions that they go with it and all of that. And perhaps most crucially, I don't think it has the sort of like school setting or whatever, right? It's not from the perspective of like a kid going to school or like a teenager or like a young adult going to school or whatever. So I feel like I don't run the risk of that, of that sort of hampering down my enjoyment of it. Which isn't to say like I don't enjoy playing as like a younger character, but certainly I do definitely skew toward playing like older characters, even older than myself, right? Even as I was younger than I am, even when I was such a kid, like in school and stuff, I still tended to prefer playing as at least a middle-aged like adult, if not older. I don't know. I think that may just be like a weird quirk about myself. But regardless, neither here nor there. I've heard such good things about it. I'm very tempted to like give it a shot. I have no idea how long it is. I don't know if it's like super duper long or something that I could just kind of like play and enjoy, right? But it's something that I've thought about, like maybe I should do that for the channel, and maybe that could be like the channel's first foray into like that sort of traditional take on JRPGs, right? Definitely been on my mind. Something to think about, because I don't like the idea that generally I just keep bouncing off of this subgenre nowadays, right? Especially since I enjoyed it growing up, right? I enjoyed it enough growing up, and there's no reason why there couldn't be one that I enjoy today, right? I think it's just the right mix of like, I don't know, commonly used settings, tropes and stuff like that. I don't know. There's certainly I don't know. It's difficult to nail down. I think the difficult part as well of maybe committing to playing like Metaphor Refantazio for the channel is, what if I played and I start to like get through it and I'm like, man, I don't like this, right? And I don't know if I want to... I don't know if I would want to commit to playing through it on the channel if I end up not liking it, right? Especially when it's a game that a lot of people end up liking as well. And then I'm sort of here like, I guess I'll play it even though I'm not really into it, you know? It feels kind of rough doing that. Certainly we have played a few games on the channel that I haven't enjoyed, but either those came out in like a launch state where a lot of people didn't really like it either. Like Cyberpunk 2077. I did not really enjoy a lot of that playthrough. And Mass Effect Andromeda as well, still kind of... I don't know, I think more people have come around on it, but I don't think I have. I don't think I enjoyed it that much at all. But I don't know. This would be certainly a weird one, wherein I'd be very contrary to the general opinion of the game, right? At least as it is now. sort of looking back to Cyberpunk, though. Definitely want to play it again, given the Phantom Liberty stuff. So many people say that it works wonders for the game and all of that. Like, it's so much better. Which, I don't know how you fix some of the like, vibe and narrative stuff from the core game. Like, right? I don't know how you would get around that, but it's definitely something that I'm interested in trying, right? Because although I thought, like, Witcher 3 wasn't a great, like, narrative role-playing game, I thought it was a fantastic action role-playing game. You know, it's a very straightforward narrative with a little bit of agency here and there. But, you know, it's no, like, CRPG. It's no, like, Baldur's Gate 3 or Disco Elysium or whatever the heck. But it's a solid story in and of itself, right? It's a very enjoyable story. I had a lot of fun with it. So if they can replicate that or outdo that with Phantom Liberty, I'd be down for it. I think that ought to do it, right? That ought to do it. That's the type of game that I don't like, the type of role-playing game that I don't like. But like I said, I'm hesitant to say that, like, this is the kind that I almost always dislike, because I feel like it precludes me from being open to trying it, which I'm totally open to trying more of them. It's just a matter of, like, finding time for it, you know? I don't know, it's difficult. All right, like I said, that ought to do it. I might record another IRL after this because we're getting into that, like, busy time of year. And I know I'm definitely going to be busy with some in real life stuff. So maybe I'll record another one of these right after this. But hey, don't let that stop you from submitting questions, which will get added to the list, as I had said. Until next time, please take care of each other.